I'm wondering what you think of how your neighbors and folks in your state looked at this debate.
Actually, my brother John, who's the publisher of our newspaper, just texted me.
And what did he say?
He thought that Warren and O'Rourke did well. So everybody was laughing at O'Rourke in the audience. He was home alone watching and had a completely different impression.
Yep. And both of them in early polling, Beto O'Rourke in Iowa was pretty high. He has since declined, and Elizabeth Warren has been rising in polling in the state.
And you can tell that Beto's betting the farm on Iowa also. You notice he was talking about ag resilience and farmers leading the way and all that stuff. And I thought Warren, again, Iowa is a populist state. We elected Tom Harkin and Chuck Grassley forever. One is a conservative populist, one's a liberal populist. And Warren was speaking, again, populist language, very appealing in Iowa. She has the deepest team in Iowa, the best ground game. And finally, Amy Klobuchar was also reeking Iowa tonight on TV with the foam and the beer routine. And often she uses the phrase, "I can see Iowa from my front porch." And so she's got that wry humor that really works well for her, and she's got a pretty extensive network of friends in Iowa, and she scored a lot of points tonight with them, I think. And especially in her close when she started talking about governing with integrity. And that is a huge, that will be a huge hit in Iowa.
Thank you.
And I think also one other thing, Warren complicated herself in Iowa by really going all in on Medicare for all. Again, Des Moines and Hartford, Connecticut are the two health insurance capitals of the country. And people are reticent. They may favor the public option, but I think they're skeptical of Medicare for all, but I might be wrong.
Jonathan, I want to go to you because I know on your fancy iPad you've been sort of keeping a little chart of what you were thinking. So, and I'm going to ask everybody to weigh on this.
Wow, look at that.
Isn't that amazing?
Show that to the audience.
This is beautiful. That, Jonathan Capehart, everybody. Technical wizard, on-air analyst, he can do it all.
Because I can't remember if I don't write it down.
No, I'm with you. All right, so everybody's going to answer this, but we'll start with you, Jonathan. So who helped themselves, who hurt themselves, and who really didn't move anywhere?
So who helped themselves? I think this was Elizabeth Warren's debate. She got the first statement, and she knocked it out of the park, in my opinion. She got the last closing statement. I think they were all at their best, with the exception of Tim Ryan. They were all at their best in their closing statements. And I think that if Beto O'Rourke could, if it was just a vote on who had the best closing statement, he would do very well, if not win. He can speak in these big, grand pronouncements, but can't get there when it comes to specifics. So in my little chart here, I say the folks who did really well, I thought, Castro, Booker, Warren, Klobuchar, who I knew would do well.
He did predict that this morning.
Today, keep your eyes out on Klobes. And Bill de Blasio, who I've written a piece just degrading his candidacy. But on that debate stage, I thought he did very well for someone. And the other thing is, I knew folks on the outskirts of the debate stage were going to make plays to get attention. And I thought Bill de Blasio did a very good job of taking advantage of the opportunities. And poor John Delaney. Every time he came on the screen, you all laughed. But the same thing about Beto. Embarrassing moments, Delaney, when he leaped out there and said, my family was separated from whatever when they came over, and it was like this lost moment. Beto O'Rourke. Tim Ryan many embarrassing moments. And I thought Bill de Blasio's answer where he invoked his, he's raising a black son and the relationship with the police. It was an important point to make, but it seemed a little gratuitous in the moment. And the last point I'll make,
especially with Cory Booker standing up there.
Right. And the last thing I will say, to your point, Art, about Klobes reeking Iowa, she's like speaking directly to Iowa. A friend of mine texted me and said, Booker needs to talk to white people. Because every answer was in my community, black and brown communities, and which I was already thinking, he's talking to South Carolina. That's all I've got.
Okay, those are excellent. Rich, who helped themselves, who didn't help themselves?
Pound for pound, starting from zero, de Blasio and Gabbard helped themselves the most, especially Tulsi, given how little time she had. Just that one exchange where she clearly defeated Tim Ryan, spiked interest on her online. I think Warren, I revised and extend my remarks a little bit from earlier. Warren did disappear in the second half. I thought she was very strong at the beginning. Maybe that counts most. But she disappeared. Clearly didn't hurt herself, though. And Cory, I think, came on in the second half. I think he was very forceful without being. Sometimes he can get a little shouty and seem like he's trying too hard. I didn't get so much of the sense of that from him tonight. I get that sense from Beto every single time, and he drives me crazy. And I think besides Beto, I don't think anyone really had a bad night. But I was most impressed with Amy Klobuchar, and again, I'm not ideologically in sync with any of those people, but I'm probably most in sync with her if I had to choose, or Delaney or Ryan probably. But I really think the problem with this field is they all got an early start, and they all thought Bernie was the rabbit to chase down the racetrack. And then Biden gets in, and while they're all dividing up, especially Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, the very liberal vote, which is only part of the party, Biden is dominating the somewhat liberal and moderate conservative vote. And if you do that and you just get a little of the very liberal vote, you win. Right. So the question is, who can compete with him on that ground if he stumbles, which I think is an entirely plausible possibility. And I think the answer from tonight would be Amy Klobuchar.
Interesting. Kristen?
Yeah, I was fascinated as well that, Joe Biden is the front runner, maybe a weak front runner, but nonetheless, he's ahead in the polls and not by a small margin. And that no one seemed to kind of try to take on his lane in a serious way, with maybe the exception of Delaney and Ryan, but I don't think they succeeded very much. But it really does seem to still be a lot of kind of chasing Bernie Sanders' slice of the vote. And I think it's important to remember that the Democratic primary electorate is not Twitter. It tends to be actually older, not as old as the Republican primary electorate, but sort of, I think it's a majority are over the age of 55. A significant portion of them consider themselves moderate. And so to the extent that there is a large slice of the Democratic Party that right now maybe only thinks Biden is their person, I don't think anybody on that stage tonight really made a play for that group.
Yeah, excellent point. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to have, do we have a microphone for folks? Yes, we do. So we have a couple mic runners. So be thinking of your questions for our panel. Art, I'll start here with you. What do you think this tells us about what tomorrow night will look like? If you were sitting on the other team that's up tomorrow night, what did you take from this to say, all right, here's what we should or shouldn't do tomorrow night?
Boy, that's a really, really tough question, not thinking like Joe Biden.
Yeah, like if you're...
well, it seems to me that Bernie picks up, he has to out-Warren, right? On Medicare for All, and Biden just needs to stay above the fray. Mm-hmm. And let's see, who is the other? Kamala
Harris and Buttigieg.
And
I'll be very disappointed if Buttigieg doesn't take from this that he's got to speak some Norwegian tomorrow night.
I mean, if you're Joe Biden, are you looking at the fact that Warren did not get piled on to say, well, maybe they're going to go after Bernie a little bit more. Maybe they go after Buttigieg. Or you think they're going to come after me.
I think
They've got to come
Oh,
after
I think it depends on what the big clips from tonight are that get
Tomorrow
circulated tomorrow morning, and if it's the moment where Tulsi Gabbard has those sparks with Ryan. I mean, if it's those moments where there is conflict, then I think you're going to see more of the candidates tomorrow night deciding to try to throw a punch or two to try to have a moment like that for themselves.
Yeah, I think a lesson is win a fight. And it doesn't necessarily need to be with Joe Biden. It just has to be with someone.
Although we have to keep in mind that the dynamic tomorrow night is going to be a lot different than tonight. 4 of the 5 front runners are going to be on that stage,
Yep.
and so you're going to have fighting in the middle of the middle of the stage,
opposed-
while the folks on the ends of the stage will be fighting amongst themselves and with
Right.
the folks in the center of the stage just to get attention. So I think tomorrow night is going to be infinitely livelier than tonight.
Okay. Now, let's go to folks here. Actually, we have somebody back there already with the microphone, and then we'll get some news.
Hi, thank you. Could you help me out with where people are on climate change? I thought I'd read something recently that it was low on the priority. We heard that a little bit tonight. Somebody had said it's kitchen table issues, and they put it low. But then you hear Inslee saying it's number 1, and everybody had that in their statements. Where is the electorate on the importance of climate change?
I think
The
the Democratic polling,
electorate.
it's really high.
It's very high among Democrats.
Beating Trump in electability and Medicare for all and climate change
Yeah.
are way up there, right?
Absolutely. So as the electorate as a whole, no. But among the Democratic electorate, absolutely. It probably skews a little bit younger in terms of the priority, where they put that, which makes some sense, but it is absolutely issue 1 or 2.
But also keep in mind, that's why Inslee's in the race.
That's right.
He is the climate change candidate, and he wouldn't do that if it weren't a high priority within the party.
Yeah. Yep, right here.
Thank you. I thought the single best line of this entire debate was when the candidates were asked what was the greatest risk. They said Trump, or one individual.
yeah.
Inslee said, which I thought was right on the mark. And so my question is, why don't the candidates spend more time talking about going after Trump, the hideousness of what he's done in the last several years, in a form of unity, as opposed to banging on each other and killing each other before the election?
Jonathan, would you like to
Sure.
start with
Well,
that?
I mean, remember, yeah, they're banging on each other, but they're not, and maybe killing each other, but over policy. They're not just throwing ad hominem attacks. They're going at each other on where they stand on policy. The person who I noticed who invoked Trump's name the most was Amy Klobuchar. But she did it in a way where she tied her comments about him to specific things that she would do as president. And I think what we saw on that stage tonight were a lot of candidates who made the decision that it is better to focus on what they would do as president than to spend so much time beating up on each other or beating up on President Trump.
It just seems a weird thing to me that Mitch McConnell got as much play as Donald Trump. But I haven't been out on the trail with any of these candidates. My understanding, out on the trail, though, there's people say there's not the appetite to talk about Trump. There's an appetite to talk about policy, which we saw reflected tonight.
Yeah, and I think Kristen and I talked about this earlier today about Democrats not wanting to replay 2016, right? Which was there was so much time and so much effort on convincing people that Trump was terrible when people already had fixed opinions of the president, and they either accepted that or they didn't, right? It's already baked into the cake.
Everybody knows he's a liar and you know, a snake and a bad person. Yeah, that's already baked into the formula.
Yeah, so they already. I think the question is who can stand up to him, who looks like they're prepared to beat him. And the cutaway shots from Beto wasn't just that they were beating up on Beto, but the cutaway shots on him where he just looked kind of like he was shrinking in on himself. He didn't look very strong. He looked really kind of passive. I mean, that's the kind of thing where voters go, look, even if I had turned the sound off on this,
Yep.
you know who won those arguments.
Yeah,
you
if
didn't
Beto
have
can get
to know
beaten
the
up
words.
on by Bill de Blasio
Yeah.
and Julian Castro, what is he going to do on a stage against
Right.
Trump?
Right. Does anyone else? Yeah, right here. Hold on one second. We're just going to get. We've got a mic runner right here. You're running very well. Thank you. That was brilliant.
I'm sorry. I have one question for all of you. I can't believe Bill de Blasio was the worst mayor of my life. I mean, in any way you did it, he is terrible. So how does he get a chance? Somebody explain it.
Any New Yorker? Rich, aren't you a New Yorker?
This has been a weird thing, and probably the best thing I've seen about the Democratic Party in a very long time from my perspective is instinctively Democrats around the country who have no idea who Bill de Blasio is, don't live in New York, hate him or distrust him or dislike him. His unfavorables are off the charts, and I don't know why. I don't know why that is, but...
But it's a New York City thing. Every New York City mayor believes that his destiny is outside of City Hall, whether it's as governor or in the White House, and he will go down like the Hindenburg, just like everyone else, every other mayor who's tried to bounce from City
President
Hall.
Giuliani, being
President
the top,
Giuliani,
President Bloomberg.
Although he never ran. He entertained it, but he had the good sense to say, Bloomberg, he had the good sense to say, I'd like to do it, but I'm not going to.
Right, right. Is there anybody else out here? Am I missing someone right there in the very back? What? Oh, sorry, you have the mic already. I totally missed you, and then you can go next.
Sorry, I beat you
Okay.
to it. This might be for Rich, but I'm thinking for the Never Trump cohort, is that a significant enough group, or is that a media creation, the Joe Scarboroughs and whatnot, to actually swing this? And would anybody on the stage tonight really resonate with them in a way that they could compete?
So pure kind of Never Trump is down to like 5 people. It's Bill Kristol and a couple others. But the broader phenomenon, and you can speak to this better than I can, is suburbanites, especially suburban women who are naturally Republicans, have been Republicans a long time, who just cannot abide the way this guy conducts himself in the office. And they are very much up for grabs. Democrats made inroads among them in 2018, and people say it's a cliche now, there are no swing voters. These are swing voters. And if Trump's going to win, he has to, at the end, the way he did in 2016, make the other candidate radioactive. At the same time, he's radioactive, and convince them to choose him over the other radioactive candidate, which is what happened with Hillary Clinton. So he's going to rely on a very negative race and turn down the other person again, and needs to win back enough of those suburban women. They don't identify themselves as Never Trump, but that effect is a Republican constituency that is alienated for Trump, that's going to have a big role in deciding what happens in 2020. No, so I think the thing with Hillary was there was a 25-year prelude where she had been made radioactive. So there's just been a lot. There's so many battle scars that she had, and that's not true with Elizabeth Warren.
Right. I want to make sure we get our last questioner in the back here before we have to go.
I was disappointed about the answers about assault rifle weapons, and I was wondering why they didn't take on the NRA and come up with more concrete answers to that.
Does anyone want to answer that? I mean, the reality of the NRA is kind of imploding right now without any help from the Democratic candidates, so they do not need as much of an answer. But I think Kristen had a really good point if you want to keep focused on that. But the fact that you have Democrats, including Democrats, one from Minnesota, one from Ohio, agreeing with much more restrictive and in some cases pretty dramatic restrictions on gun ownership is actually a pretty big, this is a big step for a Democratic Party. Booker did make a concrete proposal, though, I thought. Basically, everyone has to register in order to be able, you need a gun register license. So he was of all of them, I felt like he had the most specific, concrete answer. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I said I thought Warren kind of whiffed on that one because I thought it was sort of a layup that you could say, there are many things that you find polls show vast majorities of Democratic voters like, that vast majorities of sort of moderate voters did not used to like, but are warming to, that it's a much safer issue for Democrats within a primary to be bolder on. And I think I was a little surprised that someone like Warren, that was what I felt like was sort of her first answer that didn't sound bold.
Art, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, that rural Democrats are not at all settled on assault weapons, and they view them as a tool. And if you've got a coyote, you're going to use an AK-47. And so
AR-15.
or AR-15. Thank you. I'm not a gun owner. I don't know. But a lot of my conservative Democratic friends in rural areas talk about, banning cop killer bullets, making Kevlar vests illegal, all the kind of background checks, licenses. But when you start talking about the model of a gun with these guys, they just turn it off immediately. You can't talk about the make of the gun, but you can talk about any other gun restriction.
That's really interesting. All right. Hey, I want to thank all of you for hanging around for this entire process. Please thank this panel, Kristen, Jonathan, Rich, Art.